Are you mystified by mass transit? Do you wish your Sims would get on the bus? Hi, I'm Lee, and I'm here to give you a crash course in public transportation in city skylines. At the end of this video, you'll understand why Sims use public transportation, what makes transit lines effective, and where to put them, so your Sims will ride the bus or take the train, rather than clogging everything up with their cars. And to do that, we're going to use the same city we used in the last video. We have our central roundabout here that's connected to the outside world by our highway connection. We have all of our industrial and office zones over here, all of our residential zones over here, and our commercial zones over here. As you can see, our traffic has gotten terribly, terribly bad once again, and that's because I demolished our connections to our residential neighborhood directly to our industry and to our commercial. Also, you may notice that the traffic is moving a little bit better than we saw in the last video, and that's because I used the lane connector here in Traffic Manager President Edition to assign lanes so that hopefully the Sims would use more of them and it would help increase throughput through our central roundabout here. Alright, so let's take a look at our city, which by the way, I just want to point out that I really don't recommend this build except for that it's very instructive for studying how the Sims get around town and how they behave so that we can make better public transportation options for them. So we're not going to deal with our connection to the outside world, bringing in freight for our industry and commercial, or freight traffic moving back and forth from industry to commercial. All we're going to focus on is getting our Sims who live in our city, in our residential zones, to our commercial area to work and go shopping, and to work over here in the industrial or office buildings. You can see our zoning map right here. We don't have any mixed in zone types. We pretty much have them all separated out into separate islands. So that we will know when we're doing something well, because we'll actually see the traffic drop here dramatically in our roundabout. So we're going to start out with the simplest form of public transportation, and that is of course the humble bus. So we'll build a bus depot right here next to our university, and that will allow us to build bus stops. Now, we established in the last video that we don't really have a whole lot of cross neighborhood traffic in a residential neighborhood because we really don't have a whole lot of jobs. The game doesn't model people who are professional dog walkers for their neighbors down the street, or nannies for that matter. We don't have anybody in a cottage industry where they're receiving and sending things out to sell online right out of their house. We don't have any photography studios, anything like that. Now, we do have mail and packages, I believe, in the new DLC. So I don't have that installed, so we don't have to worry about that. So we're just going to deal with getting these Sims to work. Sims also need to go to the park, they need to go to school, and some of that will be dealt with here too, but we don't really have any parks, so once again, we're only worried about getting their Sims to work. So we're going to build a simple bus line just to prove that we don't have a whole lot of cross-town traffic here that just connects within a residential neighborhood. And we're going to see what happens, how many Sims actually use the bus line here. Okay, so let's go ahead and speed up the clock so that our Sims will move around a little faster. Now, I just want to point out we do have a few jobs in this neighborhood. We do have the crematoriums. We've got a high school right here, a university. Our Sims could walk up here to be mechanics at the bus depot or work at the hospital, and so on. So we have a handful of jobs, but just not a lot. So let's see how our buses are performing. Let's see what our Sims are expecting here. Alright, so we have a few passengers, but like I said, it's very few. We hypothesized correctly, it seems, that there really isn't going to be a whole lot of demand on this route, simply because our Sims really aren't getting much help to actually get to work. So we need to build a bus line that takes them out of the neighborhood. So why don't we do that? Let's go ahead and build a second bus line. We're going to keep this one super duper simple and just build one stop in each of our neighborhoods, right in the center, like so. And we'll go ahead and connect the loop and give that a distinct color so we can tell it apart. So now let's see what's going on with our red line. Oh my. So we have a lot of demand on this route, much more than our buses, especially if we only have 7 of them, are going to be able to handle. If we wait long enough, this number will approach 3,000 cims waiting for a bus. And you're probably thinking, hey, how come he's got some buses that hold more than 30 capacity? That's because I've got a couple of custom assets installed that are larger buses. So go ahead and check out the workshop and see if you can find one that works for you. Some of them hold far more than just 40 or 60, but those are the ones I like, so those are the ones I have installed. So we can see that we have a ton of demand here, and Sims really want to ride the bus to go to work. They don't want to drive if they don't have to. So before we move on, let's take a look at our blue line and see if anything's changed there. Oh wow. So before where we were struggling to get maybe a dozen or so Sims waiting at any bus stop, we've got almost 100 waiting at one of them here. And why is that? Well, even though our red line isn't super effective, we do have a bus stop that is very near 2 other stops on our blue line. So our Sims, as you can see, when a bus pulls up, we'll see Sims transferring back and forth. And there they go, over here to wait on a red line bus. And when the red line bus comes, you'll actually see the opposite happen. Some of them will come over here and wait for the blue line bus. So even though this red line isn't working out so well, we still have a lot more demand on the blue line because we set up a transfer point that makes it easy for them to jump off of one bus and onto another. So that's good. But our red line buses aren't getting very far because our traffic is just so bad. They're getting stuck in the same traffic that all our cars are getting stuck in, and if we watch this long enough, we'll actually see a few buses despawn because traffic is just so terrible. So what are our options in order to solve this problem? Well, one obvious one is we could, if we have the Mass Transit DLC or we use Traffic Manager President Edition, we could assign certain lanes as bus-only lanes. That'll make it so our buses can move around without getting stuck in traffic as much because there'll be dedicated lanes. Now, that's a great idea, except for there's one problem with that. In order to do that, we actually have to sacrifice lanes, and our Sims are actually using those to get around. This might interfere with our freight traffic moving around, so that would obviously not be the smartest move on our part. So what are our other options that we could use? Well, we could take our Sims underground and build a metro system. So why don't we go ahead and do that? We're going to make it super simple, just like we did with the bus line, and we're going to build one station in each neighborhood, like we see right here, right in the center, and then I'll connect that by tube. Alright, so we have our tube built, everything is set up underground. Now all we have to do is build a line, and I'm going to actually build 2 of them, one on the inside and one on the outside. Okay, so now we've got our metro network set up. Let's see how our ridership looks. Oh wow, so we've got quite a lot of Sims lining up already to jump on the metro. Now as our Sims discover this, we're going to have our 2 trains overwhelmed. So let's go ahead and double the budget here, so that way there'll be enough capacity to handle everybody who wants to ride to go to work. Right here, this line's not quite as popular yet. It was the second line we put in, so most of the Sims have flocked to it, but it will eventually catch on, so we're going to go ahead and double the budget there too. Alright, so now we've got our Sims all running along our metro line. And how is our traffic through our central roundabout? Well, it looks like it's starting to clear. So that's a really good sign. Now let's take a look at our bus lines and see what the effect is of our metro system on them. Let's look at our red line first. And the first thing we've noticed is that ridership has tanked. There's not any demand on this route at all. We still haven't seen any Sims come to wait for a bus. We've got a handful of people who are on buses still, but for the most part, our buses are all empty, and so are our bus stops. Now, why is that? Well, if we take a look, we've got a bus stop right next to a metro station, another bus stop right next to a metro station, and you get the picture. So the reason why our buses are not being used is because they've been made redundant by the metro system. So we really don't need that red line. What about our blue line? What's happening there? We added the red line and we had a lot more riders come on, and it looks like that has increased even more now that we have a super effective metro system that isn't getting stuck in traffic like our red line. So we've got a lot of people waiting for a bus. So why don't we go ahead and increase the budget here? It's probably likely that we're going to need about 250% to get most people moving. So we'll set it there. So once again, we can see that the buses and metros are great because they transfer to and from each other. There's a handful of Sims in these neighborhoods through here that would rather walk to a bus stop and then ride up to the metro as opposed to walking all the way to the metro stop. So let's take a look, and let's go ahead and remove that red line because nobody's using it. It's just costing us money. Speaking of money, let's look at our budget. And here's our public transportation budget. We have almost 1,000, whatever those are, 1,000 credits in profit from our metro system. And our bus system is costing us money, but overall, we're actually making money off of our public transportation. I wouldn't say you can expect this often, but it's usually pretty easy to get metros to be profitable. So sometimes they can finance the whole rest of your system. It just depends on how things set up and how many stops you put in, how many stations, how long your routes are, things of that nature. Also, it helps that all of our city here is high density. Metros are really great for high density, and buses are probably the better move if you've got a low density neighborhood that doesn't have, a whole lot going on in it. Look at all the Sims coming in and out of that metro station. It's a beautiful thing to see. And if we look at our roundabout, things are moving around very, very well. We're all the way in the high 80s for traffic flow. I don't think anybody can really complain about that. So what are our takeaways from what we've seen here? Well, first off, we can see the Sims love public transportation. And Sims love it so much that they're willing to transfer from buses to metros. You can see the same thing with trains, blimps, cable cars, airplanes. Any of those things are going to work really well as long as they're fast. If you're getting them caught in traffic, it's going to take them longer, and so they're just going to drive. So you have to make sure that your bus system isn't going to get caught up in traffic. So make sure that you don't have any stop signs or traffic lights that are making the bus delay any further than it has to. Of course, sometimes those things are unavoidable because of different traffic concerns, but either way, we want to keep things as easy as possible for buses to get around, or otherwise Sims will stop using them. Metros, on the other hand, are really great because they run underground. You can get a congested metro network, but it's a lot harder than it is when you're running things on the surface. Trams will work, any of the other ones will work, but the same principles apply to everything. If it doesn't have its own dedicated right-of-way like metros, then you're going to have the problems that buses have. So sometimes trams can have trouble too. It just depends. All right, so what else have we learned? Well, if we have low ridership on a line, that means that we're really not helping our Sims get to where they want to go. So we want to look and see what kind of connections are available on any underperforming bus line, for example, or any underperforming metro line. Maybe we can add feeder bus lines that'll make it easier for a line to get accessed and get used more often by our sims. Also, we've seen that public transportation, when done right, it can actually be profitable for your city. I wouldn't use it as an income source. It's not a great move, but we can expect to see some income. And obviously, we have an economy of scale. So the larger our public transportation network is, the more effective it's going to be, and the more inexpensive it will be usually as well, as long as we have enough density along our transit routes to take advantage of the transit. So that's all I have for you here today. In future videos, I'm going to show you how to lay out your city in a much healthier zoning pattern than having everything separated into little zoning islands like we have here. It's a little bit more complicated, but at the same time, it's much simpler because it helps your sims get around much easier. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. And of course, subscribe if you can. Thanks so much.